scrappy friends, it's Kim back from Making Creative Memories in Time. And if you were following along in my Making Creative Memories in Time Facebook group, you saw I made a post yesterday about our 12-inch trimmer. So some of you may be new to the Creative Memories 12-inch trimmer. You may have it, but have not yet opened it, have not begun to use it because you're still using your Fiskars or whatever brand trimmer that you have. And the reason behind doing this video tonight is I know what it's like to be so comfortable in a trimmer that you've used for a really long time, and now you're switching to a different trimmer. There's that little adjustment, right? So I wanted to just come on and slowly go through some of the things that I have found that make this Creative Memories trimmer one of the best trimmers I've ever used. Now, there's lots of function to this trimmer. Most people would look at a trimmer and say, well, it's got a blade and it's got measurement and it cuts paper, but there's so much more to this, okay? The first thing I want to do, and I want to start with this because I do not want to forget it. On the back of the Creative Memories 12-inch trimmer, there is a place to store an additional cutting mat. And I just have this one stored in the plastic. Recently, I had to change mine, and I found that it was kind of difficult to pop out. So when I put the new one back here for the next replacement, I left it in the plastic sleeve, and it pops right out. There is a place for additional blades in here, and you can store, like this one is a straight blade. This one is a pinking blade. Did you know that we have different cut blades? So we have a pinking, a Victorian. This one may not be available now. I think it was a limited time only. Scoring, scallop, colonial, stamping, wave, and perforating. And you just push down and they slide out. How fun is that? And another thing about our blades do not have any sharp area exposed. They actually have to be in the housing, and you have to push the housing down to get the blade to reveal and actually cut. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to talk about with our 12-inch trimmer. The next thing that I want to talk about is you have this bed that is about 5 1/4, a little bit greater than 5 1/4 inches to this side. There is a swing arm that fully extends to go all the way to 16 1/4 inches. Another fabulous thing about that swing arm is there is this little this little foot lever that you can extend, and what that does is it keeps this arm straight so that when you line up any paper and you line it up against the edge here, it's going to be true to the edge here, which will ensure that you get a clean, straight cut. Now, some people like to reverse their trimmer, and they like to cut what I call backwards, right? Same thing. If you extend that arm and that foot is open, if you like to cut with your trimmer backwards and you have that arm extended and that lever down and you press your paper down against this ledge and this ledge, you are going to get a good, true, straight, clean cut. Okay? So the next thing, and I'm going to go ahead and flip this back around. The next thing that I want to point out about this trimmer is I talked about the bed being a like 5 1/4 inch bed. Hopefully you're going to be able to see I'm using a piercing tool as my pointer in this video tonight. So 5 1/4 stops right here. Okay, it's just short of this edge. All right, 5 1/2 is literally right there when this arm extends, 5.5 is right there. So measurement is very easy using this trimmer, very easy. Okay, the next thing, I'm going to put this back in. The next thing that I'm going to point out is our housing mechanism. So this is the housing mechanism, and it just pops open, and you just pull out your blade that you want to exchange. See, there's nothing sharp anywhere. In order for this blade to actually cut, see some paper stuck right there. Your blade is going to let you know when it's ready to be replaced, and so will your mat. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But when you replace a blade, the name of the blade and the shutter is always going to point to the left. You just drop it in, close your housing and snap it, and it's ready to go. This arm is really nice. It's a heavy metal arm. I really like this. And there's a couple different guides that help you. Let's talk about this mat first. So if you look at this mat, you see there's a number 1 here. Down here at the bottom, you see there's a number 2. I don't care what type of trimmer you use. My favorite was the Fiskars rail trimmer, and it had the K-blade, and I would have to replace that mat because this mat takes the brunt of what your blade does, and so you have to replace it. So Creative Memories numbers our mat for us, and when your number 1 dash line starts getting all jagged and you don't get a clean cut, you simply pop it out and you do a 180 and you pop in, and the number 2 is at the top, and you just work your finger until you rub it down until it all snaps in place. Okay, and then when number 2 gets all rickety and you need a new piece of the mat, you pull your mat out and you flip it over and you find number 3, and then you'll line up number 3, and then when number 3 gets all rickety, you line up number 4. So Creative Memories is truly giving you the best bang for your buck with their trimmer mat. You get 4 cutting strips out of 1 mat, and I love that, and I love that it's numbered for you. Okay, so now let's talk about the next awesome feature. So on your housing, a lot of people don't realize, I'm going to put a piece of paper in so you can see, and this is just scrap paper that I'm using. So this dash line is exactly where your blade is going to cut. That is exactly where the blade, when pressed down, makes contact with the mat, and that is where your paper will cut. So I'm just going to put this piece in here so you can see. So at the top of your trimmer and at the bottom of your trimmer, we have these little sliding guides. These I found when I switched from the Fiskars to the Creative Memories trimmer, until I got used to where the blade was going to cut and I could visually get that, because it takes, when you switch to a new trimmer, it takes a few cuts to get used to it. But I would use these sight guides all the time. And the reason I wanted to put paper in, hopefully you can see that black line on that sight guide. And that lines up exactly, that black line lines up with your little dash line on your mat. So that is another awesome feature when you're not using it. That one slides right back in, out of the way at the top. This one slides right back in, out of the way at the bottom. Okay. So another thing that I want to point out to you is the housing has some marks on it. So I'm going to turn the trimmer a little bit sideways so you can see this. So you can see that there is a white mark on the left-hand side of the housing where the blade sits. And there is also like a little point, like a little white plastic point, and those line up, okay? Those are there. For me, this is how I use this, and everybody finds there's so many different, unique, wonderful ways you can use this trimmer besides what I'm just going to tell you tonight. But I'm pointing out the things I love about this. So the way I use that is if I'm gutting paper, I can use that as a sight line, but it's also over here on this side where we have measurements down this rail, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So the same little white line is there, and that same little foot that shows you where your blade stops. And that is something that I use all the time if I'm using the bed to measure, or if I am using this rail with measurements on this side and I'm getting paper. If you follow me, you know I like to get paper for a couple different reasons. Number one, if you're layering a full sheet, or you've barely trimmed paper over a cardstock that's going to be like a 1/4 inch edge underneath providing cover, why add that weight to your book? You can get that bottom piece of paper and use that same color for mats, or use it for future mats. So I love to get paper. And when I get paper, that was something that took me just a hot minute to get used to with this trimmer. I was used to the Fiskars cut reel trimmer that had a blade that pierced like in a point. It pierced and then you pull down. And I was used to that. And this one is on a housing. But after I gutted paper maybe 4 or 5 times, and I learned to use, especially gutting, I learned to use this sight guide and that little point right there. I'm going to hold this up. Maybe you can see that. That little point right there. And maybe you can see like that if I wanted to stop at 4 inches, this is definitely going to let me stop at 4 inches. Okay. So that, and be sure, friends, as I'm going through this video, if this trimmer is new to you and you have questions, leave comments. If you've been using this trimmer since it came out and you love it, put all the wonderful things in the comments that you love about this trimmer. Okay. So we've talked about the housing unit, we've talked about the guidelines, we've talked about the different blades, and the blades really are so easy to just switch in and out. You pop one in, snap your housing back, and you're good to go. Super easy to change those out. Okay, the next thing that I do want to talk about is the measurement on this side. I use this, as I just said, all the time when I'm getting paper. And it is true to measurement. So here you start with your 0 inch right where your paper lines up. And then you go through your 16ths, your 8ths, your quarters down to your inch, all the way down to, well, this, I'm working with an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. This is just a scrap paper right now. But if I had a designer paper, it would come all the way down to 12 inches. Okay. I absolutely love using the ruler on this side. And for those of you who know me and who follow me, you know that I'm a little visually impaired, right? So what I like to do when I'm gutting paper, and let's just say I am going to gut this paper at 1 inch, okay? So what I like to do, I get my paper where it needs to be, and because I'm using it with this ruler facing me, I can use this mark and line up at 1 inch. Do you see how that mark now and that little plastic point there helps you? And I am going to just be able to press down. And because this is an 11-inch piece of paper, I'm going to go down to 10. And I'm just going to watch where my mark is. And then that's going to be my 10-inch. And do you see what? A nice clean cut. And I have 1 inch. And it was super easy to do. So when I gut, sometimes I will either stand up if I'm not filming, because like you guys know me, I don't like to put my head in the camera. This just fell out. And it's only because I have it in the plastic and I'm moving the trimmer around. I will stand up sometimes and use that. But if I'm filming sometimes you guys don't see this because I cut it out of my videos, but a lot of time I will turn it sideways just because it makes it easy to read. So keep that in mind. And if this is a trimmer that you've used for a really long time and you've not tried that hack, try it. Try it on scrap paper first and see if you like that hack, if that helps you, because I love that hack. Okay, so now we've talked about all the important mechanical pieces. Let's talk about all the markings. So we'll come back to our um, 15, we will come back. I'll get it out in a second to our 16ths, 8ths, quarters in just a second. But I want to talk about these markings here. So there is a bold mark here that indicates a 3x3 that lets you check to make sure if you're cutting a 3x3 mat that you are square 3x3. You have got a 4x6 measurement here that also lets you work if you're cutting 4-inch and you don't necessarily want to open your arm to do 6-inch, but your paper is 4x12, then, you know, all you have to do is use your 4x6 mat there, okay? Or you've cut it 6 inches. I said that backwards. And then you just line it up to your 4-inch. You've got your 4.5 by your 6.5 and your 5x7. So those markings are already on there for you. Something that I absolutely love, and I'm going to, again, these are scrap papers, okay? Scrap, this is, well, they're not scrap. It's Neenah cardstock that I use sometimes for my white mat under my photos, and they come 8.5 by 11. But how many of you guys have been using this trimmer for a really long time and you've never used the 45-degree angle? I love this, okay? I love it. So if you want to cut a triangle and you want to put a 45-degree angle on a triangle and you want this to go on your scrapbook page, right? You want this to go on your scrapbook page. Now this is going to be a smaller triangle because I'm working with the 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. But you line up the point of your paper here, and then the edge of your paper lines up against that 45-degree angle, and then it comes off the bottom and the top. And what you do is you just put your housing down and you push. One push. Look what crisp, clean, beautiful cuts. So now this, and the way that I like to use these triangles is sometimes I like to, and I don't know if that's in frame or not, friends, sometimes I like to have triangles that come around and out my page. So isn't that awesome? If that is new to you, leave a comment and let me know. If you've used that before, leave a comment and let me know. I love to use the 45-degree angle. So then what you do is you're going to flip your paper back over where you have that long edge again. And this is how you would get 2 triangles out of this dimension paper, which is 8.5 by 11. And then let me flip it back this way. I'd flipped it over and didn't even realize I'd flipped it over, and it was too long down here. So that you have to pay attention to. Pay attention to where your paper is going to slide in. Now I could have cut that out of this video because this is not a live video, but it's important for you to see that sometimes if it's not working, flip your paper. Flip it. Just flip it. Okay? And then when you're lined up again, one cut. And I have another beautiful, precise triangle. So now let's talk just a minute about, and I'm going to zoom in for this part so that you can see this really well, friends. Or at least I hope I'm going to zoom in so you can see this really well. I'm trying my camera mount in a little bit different position, and because I'm short, I may not be able to make sure I'm nice and straight, so I apologize if I'm not. So this is something that a lot of people struggle with. And I am so guilty, especially if I design a workshop, I'll add in a 7/8 or a 5/8. And I think, and I'm not saying anything bad, it's just we are so used to the inch on any trimmer we're using. We're used to the 1/4 inch, the 1/2 inch, and the 3/4 inch, and we avoid any of the 16ths or the 8ths, right? Just by nature, we do that. Just by nature, we do that. So for those of you who have got this down, I apologize. If you're somebody that doesn't have this down, I hope that what I go over right now really helps you and will stick with you. And when you're in your own craft room and you're working and you're following someone's cutting guide and it says 3/8, 7/8, 5/8, 7/16, if any of those just random measurements pops up and you need to stop and count before you do your cut, stop and count. Nobody's going to know you're stopping and counting. I use different measurements all the time. I still have to stop and count because you get in your rush of getting your project done and you get in the groove and the flow of working, and sometimes your brain is just not ready to do math, right? Sometimes your brain is not ready for math. So I'm going to talk about these marks, and I'm going to talk about them only between the 1 and 2 because you can see very well between the 1 and 2, but they apply between any inch, right? It's the same thing for 2 and whatever measurement, 3 and whatever measurement, 7 and whatever measurement, 9 and whatever measurement, okay? So you guys know that there are 16 marks in between inches, right? There's 16 equal increments or units in between each inch. So when you start, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Your next inch is 16, right? So everybody knows the 1/4, everybody knows the 1/2, and everybody knows the 3/4. But let's go back and look at what happens in between the quarter, in between the half, in between the 3/4, and in between the next inch. Okay, so on your specifically your Creative Memories trimmer. I have my other trimmers all sitting over to the side, but I'm not going to reference them because this is what I use. They probably are about 100% the same. You have short lines and a little bit longer lines, and then you have your quarters. The shortest marking is your 16th, which is also the smallest increment of measure on your trimmer. So the 16th is going to give you the most narrow cut, the most narrow edge, the most narrow border, okay? Then that first little long line is 1/8. Your next short line goes back to your 16th. That is 3/16. Then your next long line is your 4th, which again, I feel like everybody knows the 4th, okay? Then your next short line is 5/16. Your next long line, your 1/8 inch, is 3/8. Your next short line is 7/16. And then you have a half, okay? Half inch. All right, then your next short line is 9/16. And then you have 5/8. And then you have 11/16. And then you have 3/4. And then you have 13/16. You have 7/8 and 15/16. And then your 16/16 would be your next inch. All right. And don't let the fact, I know a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I struggled with math when I was in school. I struggled with fractions when I was in school. Oh my gosh, I just don't remember the little short lines, the smallest lines are 16th, okay? And they're odd. So you have 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15. If you can remember that, they're odd. 1/16, 3/16, 5/16, 7/16. Okay, 9/16, 11/16, 13/16, 15/16. Okay, that takes care of your little 16ths. Now your 8ths, they're odd as well. But then when you get, so we've got 1/8. This one would be 2/8, but when we reduce that fraction, what does 2/8 become? 2/8 becomes 1/4. So we've got 1/8, we've got 1/4. All right, then we've got 3/8, and then we have a half. And then we have 5/8, 3/4, and 7/8. Okay? And don't fret. Don't fret. And when you're working on a workshop, especially if you purchase one of my workshops or you purchase the paper and get the workshop for free, and I have any of these measurements, nobody's going to know that you're stopping and counting to see where that is. Now, those marks are also, and where I'm zoomed in, I don't know, friends, if you can see this. So let's make sure we get it so you can see it. Those same marks are also at the bottom. So when you line your paper up, let me zoom back out. And hopefully that made sense. Hopefully that wasn't anything scary or frightening. Now, because I'm working with an 11-inch piece of paper and not a full 12-inch piece of paper, it's not going to come all the way down to the bottom. But if I was working with a 12-inch piece of paper and I wanted my cut to be 1 1/16, you're going to line up the 1 1/16 at the top, and you're going to make sure you're lined up at 1 1/16 at the bottom, and then you're going to cut. Okay, so as long, and let me grab a piece of. Here is a piece of 12-inch. I'm using this as like scrap to practice a technique. So let's say I want this to be 1 1/8. All right. If I line this up right here, and what I like to do is normally I like to cut the smaller pieces this direction, but for the demonstration of this video, I'm going to do it here. So 1 1/8. I'm going to line up there. These edges are pushed up tight. Now I'm going to come down here at the bottom, and I am going to look for the 1/8 mark at the bottom. Make sure I'm on the 1/8 mark at the top. And I am. And then I'm going to drop my arm and make my cut. Now I have a perfectly straight 1 1/8. Okay? And I absolutely love that this trimmer cuts such smooth edges. Now, if you don't get a smooth edge, the first thing to try is your mat. This mat, the groove may be worn, and you may need to flip to the next number, or your blade may need to be changed. Okay? So that, I think, is, oh, one other thing I wanted to share with you. When you are cutting, a lot of people will say, how do I know where 1/4 of an inch is? Now, this is the piece that I gutted, okay? How do I know where 1/4 of an inch is? So your cut is right here on the dash. 1/4 of an inch is you line up your paper at the edge, this edge of that gray mat, and the edge of that gray mat is 1/4. So now I have a perfect 1/4 inch strip. Okay. Now what about a half? Where is a half on this trimmer? A half lines up exactly right here. That's a half. So that's another 1/4. Okay. So you line that up all the way down, and now you have a half. Okay. So there's your 1/2 inch strip, and there's your 1/4 inch strip. So that's where your half is if you're cutting to the inside, and that's where your 1/2 inch is if you're cutting to the inside. Usually, if something is 1.5 inches or less, I will cut it to the inside. So let's say I need a 1.5 inch piece of paper. I will cut it to the inside. Let me line up my half. And I will cut to the inside. And the reason I do that is this gives me a space to put my hand and hold my paper. Over here, I don't have a space to put my hand and hold my paper. So if I was, you remember I said this is for demonstration purposes. Like if I was going to cut 1 inch, I would not line it up here. I would turn it around and line it up over here, because you can get yourself aligned, and then you can hold your paper and trim. Okay, so I think that I have just about gone over all of the things that I love about this Creative Memories trimmer, and I want to hear from you now. Do you have the trimmer? Do you love the trimmer? Is the trimmer something that you absolutely could not live without? What are your favorite hacks? If you have been using the trimmer and there's hacks that you use that I didn't talk about, leave them in the comments. Let other people know ways that you love this trimmer. And I want to throw out an idea if you would love to have this trimmer and you don't and you are not already an advisor. You can join my team for $49. You immediately get a $50 credit. This trimmer can be purchased for free with that $50 credit. So it ends up you join my team for $49. $50 comes immediately back to you, so you're joining my team for free. You can get this trimmer with your $50 credit. Okay, it comes with one blade and the mat. Any other blades and extra mats you would need to purchase on your own. And there is a special join gift. It is, I don't have it yet. Mine has not arrived for this quarter. It is an album cover set that is a beautiful blue, and it has a beautiful blue foiling, and you get sample pages and sample page protectors on the inside. And that is a $40 value for free. Another reason why you should join my team is I have an exclusive team Facebook page. You become part of the Making Creative Memories in Time team. When I do workshops, you get those workshop guides for free. So I would love to have you join my team. If this is something you've been thinking about, you can leave a comment. You can send me a message. I would love to have you join. This is an amazing gift. Very rarely do we have, I think, I've been with Creative Memories for a little bit better than a year, and only one other time did we have an album as a join gift. So I would love to have you join my team. I would love to have you join my team. And hopefully, some of the things I talked about tonight with this trimmer will help you use it more. Do not be afraid of your trimmer, no matter what brand you have. But if you have this or you want this, it is not complicated. You just like any other trimmer. For me, the hardest part was getting used to the housing, because I was used to a blade that went down into the paper and you just pull. This does go into the paper, but there's this housing, but it's very comfortable. Once you get started with it, it's very, very comfortable. It's one of the best trimmers, if not the best trimmer on the market. So please let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you soon. Until next time, friends, happy scrapping.